Hi, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together.
If you have ever stood outside of your kid's bedroom door after a friendship fallout, or you just want to know and learn as much as you can about how to support them to have really healthy friendships, not just lots of friends, healthy friendships, then you are going to absolutely love this conversation I'm about to have with the wonderful Michelle Mitchell. Michelle and I have met before on this podcast, and she's an extraordinary supporter of parents and families. She's a speaker. She's a 10 times author, and she is the new author of a book called Friendship Smart, which I've just devoured. I've actually read it twice. And there are some parts of this book that, honestly, Michelle, I just want to say a huge and very warm welcome to joining us here on the podcast, first and foremost. And thank you for taking the time to write this book. You and we talk often, and your wise counsel for my own family, kids, friendship dramas has been so appreciated. And I wish this book had been around a long time ago, but it's here now. And I've had the bat phone to Michelle Mitchell anyway, so I've been very, very lucky. But the work that you've put into this, and the ideas and the insights that you have shared, and the frameworks that you've created are just so powerful and memorable, and they make so much sense. So I just want to say thank you for writing it, and thank you for joining me today to talk about it so that parents can get some insights into what they can do to support their own children.
Oh, Jodi, can I first say thank you for having me as well, and just honour the work that you do. This podcast is something that I tune into, especially when I'm feeling anxious, so thank you as well. And I really appreciate your friendship and being here. I want to pick up on something that you just said. This is about our kids having quality relationships that sustain them. This is not about winning popularity contests or our kids being school captain, This is actually about setting them up with the skills they need for the rest of their lives. That's what I'm interested in. So the people who are listening right now, I want them to zero in on their kids, not everyone else's kids, their kids, and what skills their kids might be missing and what their kids need to actually feel fulfilled and sustained in life. And that's what I care about.
One of the things, and we won't come to it straight away because I want to ask you about it in a few minutes, but there's one particular framework, the friendship framework, the triangle, that when I looked at that, I started to even think about immediately my own friendships and kind of not evaluating my friendships, but reflecting on the three elements of this triangle in my own friendships, and reflecting on why some friendships feel the way they do and why others haven't felt the way that I would have loved for them to have felt. And, that alone is gold, but there's so much more to talk about. And I wonder, Michelle, I don't want to sort of preface what you're about to say, but one of the things that I know is a massive problem, not just for kids, but across society, and that's loneliness.
Yeah.
And we know making friends and having dear friends, it is the thing, the connections in our lives with family as well. But they are the biggest contributor to our mental health and our well-being. They're the people we go to when we're having a hard time. They're the people our kids are sharing similar experiences with as they go through the joys and the highs and the lows of puberty and relationships and school and work and all of the wonderful things that growing up brings. But it's more important than ever that we can support our kids with their friendships, because it's different now, isn't it, for young people when it comes to making friends?
And I can talk about this in twofold as well. Like, disconnection is our story as well. Like, the research tells us that our circles of support are getting smaller, and in some cases they're disappearing for people altogether. And as I wrote this book and I was speaking to adults, like you're saying, Jodi, like you resonated with the book, that so many parents were telling me, Michelle, you're teaching me a thing or two here as well, or I'm going to use this tomorrow at work, because we know in our bones that trust is scarce. psychological distress is real, and the real answer to all that is relationship with each other. But adolescence is not just some kind of minor chapter in kids' life that's dramatic and going to just pass. This stuff stays with our kids way after school corridors are behind them. So we're setting them up for first love, first jobs, the first time someone really pushes their worth, and we're not there to catch them. And I've got kids 27 and 25 now, and I'm really watching them outwork the things or undo some of the things that they experienced when they were 13 to 15. And this stuff takes time because it matters. It's such a sophisticated skill set. And I don't want loneliness to be any kid's story at 13, or 14 or 9. I don't want them turning to AI for companionship. I want them to really know what the real thing feels like.
Look, what you've just said is very common. It's happening more, and we also know that with the devices that our kids are on. I mean, I won't labour this point because it won't be new to anybody listening, but our kids are obviously connecting through their devices, through Snapchat. They'll text, and our daughter's 16, and she works at McDonald's now. She was at GYG. She's now at McDonald's, and she serves on the drive-through and gets the orders ready for customers and everything. But when we go through the drive-through, do you think she wants to place her McDonald's order? And the rule is, if you don't want to order it, you don't get it. Like, I'm not doing it, And so just in terms of communication, we've got to make sure that they're feeling confident as well as equipped. And
let's go there, Jodi, for just a minute, because it shaped what our kids see as normal communication and normal in relationships. And so it becomes normal for them to walk away from conflict. It becomes normal for them to opt out when they're uncomfortable. It becomes normal for them to say minimal words and abbreviate things to the point where other people are excluded or don't understand. And the language of this up and coming generation is very different because it is shaped by technology. So it does have some really detrimental effects on relationships. And things like trust, boundaries, repair, they're things we actually have to dive in and teach and model and give our kids low stakes environments to practice, which is not always school, because school is high pressure, high stakes. So we have to dive in and do this because phones and technology and school and where they're living their lives is not giving them an opportunity to practice these things.
It's not. Most parents, look, I don't know, I might be wrong. I might be generalizing, and you'll let me know. But in my mind, most parents will probably have a time when they felt that their child might be struggling with friendships. There might be an issue or a challenge with a peer. There might be, their child might be on the receiving end of bullying. Their child might be bullying someone else. There could be some really tricky friendship problems, or just literally their child is really struggling to find friends and is spending recess and lunch alone. And that social rejection, it is, I do remember learning a long time ago, and I did read in your book too, you wrote about it, that it is painful. It is like being physically injured.
Yeah.
And when you're a parent,
the same way. Yeah.
So it's registered in the brain the same way.
Yeah.
And for us as parents, it is heartbreaking. And I think, like what you said before, is we're not there with them when they're interacting in their friendships. We're not on the ground with them.
Yeah.
So how much influence can we actually have on making, really supporting them so that when they are out there in the big wide world interacting, so that we can support them to really, make good friends, reflect on the health of their friendships, and create a really beautiful social community around themselves?
This is a great question. I'm reflecting on a conversation I had with a journalist actually during the interviews after I wrote this book. And I also want to say up front to parents that social skills are actually skills that can be taught. This is not serendipity right here, but some kids need more upskilling than others at different stages of their life as well. And the reason why I wrote Friendship Smart in such a practical way, I think, is to give parents those tools so they know what to say in those moments. If parents don't know what to do when their kids need to transition a friendship group or recognize a quality quality relationship, or, all those practical things, or know when to trust someone with a secret and when not to,
My gosh,
know how to
yes.
say sorry. If they don't know how to
Yes.
teach kids those skills and show up surprisingly helpful, like validating's one thing, but we've actually got to come up with the goods sometimes. If we can't teach our kids well in an actual way that's digestible to them, like, what good are you? What are you doing, parents? Like, come on, So we've got to actually know this stuff ourselves. And because we weren't taught it, we were told to go play, go work it out. And I don't think we were living in such relationally complex times. I think, the stakes are high for our kids. So we have to have the goods. But let me reflect on this journalist. He had just come from a phone call from his son who had had a bust up with a girl. And I could see how rattled this man was. And this dad was close to tears. And he said to me, I'm so glad my son could ring me. And I said to my son, Michelle, that if I could take half of this pain for you, I would. But Michelle, am I saying the right thing? Because our kids have to go through this stuff, don't they? And I get from your book that our kids really have to walk this journey. Because I say in my book, I thought I knew what marriage was until I was married. I thought I knew what it was like to be a mum until I had a baby in my arms. And our kids can't understand friendship until they feet hit the pavement and they actually walk this stuff out. But I said to him, don't retract that statement, just add an and to it. Like, I want to take this pain from you, but you and I know I can't. So the very best thing I can do is wrap my arms around you right now and help you face the world stronger tomorrow. And that comes in 3 forms, Jodi. That comes in us validating that their emotions make sense. Yeah. I believe you. Then it comes with, when they're ready, and timing is important, being surprisingly helpful. And the third thing is this, there's this underlying desire for all of our kids that actually need us protect them. And there's sometimes we need to actually step up and do that.
Yes. Well, off air, we were talking, weren't we, about when as a parent, you might want to just march down to that school and have 5 minutes with a kid who needs a little bit of waffle, which we don't and we can't and we absolutely should not. But so you've said 3 things. Validating their emotions, and listeners to this podcast will know that it's very, very important. How we feel is how we feel. And for children to know that a trusted adult's going to say, I completely understand why you feel the way you feel. It makes perfect sense and it's tough. Then you said about being surprisingly helpful, which I'm like, I'm leaning in. Okay. And then the last one was sometimes we have to step in. So for those last 2, being surprisingly helpful. And am I right in thinking that, because the next question I want to ask you is about the friendship framework. Okay. Would that be the surprisingly helpful part? Or, I mean, I'm sure there's more to it.
Yeah. There's scripts, there's tools, there's Dear Adolescent letters. There's so much you can share with your kids in this book, and each chapter has a Michelle Mitchell tool in it, at least one, sometimes 2. But the baseline of all of the tools comes in this framework. And our kids rarely show up with recognition of what's going on. They show up in a fog of uncertainty. And imagine your child sitting on like the school bench just with fog around them. Is this right? Is this wrong? I'm not sure what's going on. And they need a way to clear the fog and see things clearly. And this is what the framework is all about. It's not the entry point. It's hopefully the exit point where they go, that's what's going on. Now I can make some decisions. So I built this framework out of the research that helps us understand what makes long-term relationships stick. So this is a framework that can stay with them for the rest of their lives. So platonic and romantic relationships. So this is good news, parents. So this is going to help them choose better partners long-term. This is what we want. So it's built on 3 things: safety, chemistry, and effort. And if our kids understand that safety, let's just break it down really simply for the podcast, but respected and protected, Chemistry is that ease, playfulness, and that feeling that you just click. And effort is the thing that says that person keeps showing up in the small and the big things. So yes, it's about do they say sorry, but it's also, do they notice when I'm not there? And the idea with the framework is that these things exist on a sliding scale. When I work with young people, I actually get them to rate these things out of 10. And what actually happens is they exist on a triangle, and I know you have a YouTube channel, okay? So I'm actually going to show everyone one of the 12 diagrams, okay?
Yeah.
So they exist on a sliding scale. This young person has given chemistry an 8 out of 10. This is the most common shape that exists out of this framework. Because chemistry, because with young people, chemistry is high and they chase that dopamine. So this is like, we click, there's ease, there's playfulness, but effort and safety might be 6 out of 10, which is reasonable, Jodi, for their age, because their skills are still developing. So this might be a shape that is very commonly experienced. I always say friendship should base in safety, gather energy through chemistry, and be maintained through effort. And they are how those three things work together. And there's 12 different shapes that can exist. And I want kids to see those patterns. I want them to see when a friendship looks dramatic. It's got a lot of chemistry, a lot of effort because you're chasing that chemistry, but safety being kicked in. And it's like, there's a high risk factor here, kid. Like, this is not a safe friendship. Yeah.
Yes. This podcast is on YouTube, but for the sake of those of you who are listening and not watching, they're triangles. And so each one of the shapes, when you can think of 3 points of a triangle, but for the friendship that is a stretch friendship, like you just described, which is the high chemistry and the high effort, then you can just understand how the shape will be skewed in those different directions, kind of further towards the points of that triangle. When we spoke about this, and it made me, this is the framework that is just so powerful, Michelle. And that was what got me immediately, obviously, reflecting on my own friendships. And I remember one of my dear friends who I've been friends with since I think our parents were friends before we were even born. And that she always we'd talk about friendship like a bank account, that, you got to make deposits and withdrawals, of course. But, sometimes people are making a lot of withdrawals and not enough deposits. And that's obviously the effort part of this framework. But also the thing that you touched on earlier was about the trust factor. And I imagine that with the safety you said about respected and protected, and is the trust factor linked with that? Because, you know when you're as an adolescent who you can share something with that's private and who is going to tell absolutely everybody. And so is that the safety element of the framework that's
and
that comes into,
there's a whole chapter on trust. Trust is always a risk, Jodi. It's not assured. And I give kids 3 trust lenses. So trust is an interesting one. We judge it, I say intention, not character, because kids are growing in character. So I always judge, look at people's intention. Competency. That's a really interesting tool linked to trust. But if you employ someone in a job, you can't trust an employee with a job that they don't have the competencies to deliver. So it's really, really important in friendship that we understand that our kids actually have to know how to hold down a conversation or read their text messages or show up on time. It's stuff like that matters with trust. And the third one is consistency. So it's the predictability of a person. Now, it's an interesting story. My son has a mate who never answers his text messages. Now, you'd think that isn't a great friendship skill, but because it's consistently him, my son is never offended because it is predictable. So that's a really interesting one to think about with regards to trust.
Yes. Coming back to the things that you said earlier about really validating friendship challenges, about being surprisingly helpful and stepping in, which we can come to later, because I do want to talk about bullying, and that's probably a good opportunity to chat about that. With the frameworks, because I'm sort of even picturing how to talk to my own kids about this. They're 18 and 16, and I have a blackboard in our family room, and often I'll just write, if I find something interesting, I'll just draw it on the blackboard or write a quote on the blackboard and just leave it. I won't even point to it, but it's there and people see it. And I wonder if
Mum's at it again.
Yeah, Mum's at it again. Mum's totally at it. Mum's always at it. How would you introduce this to an adolescent? Like, how would you, like, what would be the timing? What would be kind of like it's got to be the right timing, doesn't it? And how would you kind of introduce this idea so that, because it's really powerful, and once it's introduced, it's a place conversations can always come back to. But yeah, how would you kind of like, introduce this idea to begin with?
I've got a book coming out later on in the year for
What?
Yes, I do, for young ones. I know, but the content is in the book. I know. Jodi's like,
is it like when do you sleep?
No, I'm not.
Is this all like how to implement for young people
to be able to, to actually use it themselves. But if I was a parent right now who picked up my book, you can do it. So it actually, with their 8 to 12, they're going to be a lot more receptive. And I'd say, I have found something that I think is going to help you heaps. So all parents need to do is say, use the shapes in the book and actually use the language in the book and just highlight the words you want to use and just show them from there. If you've got a, say, 13 to 17-year-old, you could actually say to them, I've just read something that I think answers some of the questions that you're thinking about, but I want to know if you'd be interested in looking at it. And just leave it at that and do. So you have to have their permission to step forward. Or you go you leave it on the kitchen bench and go, I found this really interesting book. I want to know what you think about page 200 and something, right? So you point them to exactly the page that deals with the issue they're on about. And there's Dear Adolescent letters that talk, dear adolescent, you're going through a friendship transition. There are 2 things I want you to know. So there's actually, you can point them to a page that actually helps with their issue.
Oh, brilliant. And as you're sharing these different ideas, what I'm thinking I'm going to do is print the page or, just kind of replicate it and just talk about that concept. Yeah, because I just think that I'd like to have that kind of the triangle there. And just to say, and exactly what you said, I've learned something so interesting.
What do you think about it is another one.
It'd be really helpful. Yeah.
I always, any chance I get to make my sons the hero of the room works. Okay.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. What do you think about it? Okay.
Really strange. I know that in your age, they often talk about friendships like red flags and green flags, but I've found something really different. What do you think about this? And one of the reasons I built the framework, Jodi, is because North Star, red flag, green flags, it's something we often use. And I've got nothing, against it, but to me, it's not enough. And our kids deserve more and need more and can handle more because the framework gives them more nuance and it gives them more control to understand that they can shift the shape. They can add safety, chemistry and effort, and they can watch what comes back in return as well. There's so much more movement, flexibility and nuance with it. And when I walk into a grade 9 classroom, quite honestly, I don't see North Star. I see north, south, east, west. And right in the middle of it is a whole lot of humanity that needs to be worked out,
So complex. If you were to pick apart the skills involved in friendship and communication, they're so nuanced. The social cues, the body language, with girls and boys, it can be different as well. I won't dive into that. But, when, for example, the challenges in girls' relationships can be really almost invisible to anyone else who's watching.
Relational aggression.
Thank you. Relational aggression.
Tell us though, and everyone has to have a really open mind about this, that our boys are experiencing relational aggression in almost the same measure as our girls.
Oh,
so
really?
it's your difference. Yeah.
Can you define it? Because I wasn't planning on asking you about this, but when your child comes home and they're the sharing what is defined as relational aggression, but as a parent, you might not have had a term for it, and now you will. What does that look like for boys and girls, Michelle?
Yeah, so it's a silent treatment. It's the backstabbing, it's the gossip, it's the rumors, it's the push away that might not be so obvious. It's the meanness that might not be so obvious to anyone else. Now, the difference is this, Jodi, is girls will tend to talk about it, debrief about it, catastrophize about it, which keeps it alive longer. Our boys very rarely talk about friendship issues. They will very rarely even debrief their friendships with each other, which means they don't stay alive for as long. That's a positive, but it also means that they tend to internalize them, which brings us to bullying maybe in the sense that if meanness is amplifying to the point where it's one-sided, where there's a real imbalance of power, where they're not able to get on top of, that imbalance of power, and they're in a situation with bullying where, to be honest, no one should or could handle that imbalance of power alone. Yeah. Boys will tend to not talk. And I've had sometimes boys in my office for weeks, sometimes months, not wanting to articulate that they're the boy in the room who can't handle, the relational aggression or the outright physical assault or whatever it be that's happening.
Yes. So bullying, it is a devastating experience for anyone who has ever been on the receiving end. And just as an aside, I had it was not for a long period of time, but I was a victim of bullying from a girl, and it was an horrendous experience. I was ducking and weaving. I was trying to hide in the hallways. I didn't want to go to my locker. I was afraid. I was anxious. And my friend stood up for me.
Wow.
And it never happened again.
There you go.
And I was very, very lucky, and I'll always be grateful. But it's a really hard thing to stand up for a friend. It's devastating for a parent when their child is going through it. It's really hard on the we obviously, we're on a podcast. We don't have all the time that we would love to devote to this. But what would you want parents listening to know? Yeah. Those who might be in the thick of it, or those who kind of feel like, well, maybe this will be a part of our life at some stage.
And there's so much to say, because one timely act like that can actually stop bullying in its track. And bullying thrives in silence. But I want kids to also know that they don't have to do these big superhero moves to stand up for someone. Sometimes it's as simple as going to the person afterwards and saying, "Are you okay?" Or "You can always join us, at lunchtime." It doesn't have to be this big upstanding move where they go, "Hey, stop, I'm the hero of the situation," because sometimes that can escalate things. So I think it's really good for our kids to know there's a whole range of things that they can do that's actually helpful, from anonymously reporting things all the way through. But Jodi, would it be helpful to talk to parents about how to have a first conversation about bullying with a kid? Because this is hard. And I'm talking about bullying where, I've seen horrible stuff, kids' backs getting stomped on. That's, that's assault. But, kids' heads getting flushed down the toilet. I've seen, kids getting called names every single day and isolated and picked on. And it's stuff that makes you go, give me 5 minutes alone with that kid and they're never going to touch you again,
Yes.
It's just and there's no doubt about it. Or you see some of these text messages, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to, you're going to, and I'm just like, who do you think you are, kid? And it makes your blood boil. But when it gets to parents' ears, parents are normally the last one to know. That's the truth of it. And parents then, I want to say to parents, if they're in the situation where their kid is being bullied and you feel like you are hurting too, the reality is an assault or a situation that's hurting your child is actually because you are also being bullied. Someone hurting your child is also hurting you, So it is okay to feel hurt and wounded as well. But your kid needs that feeling that you've got you so you can show up well for them. So first conversations, let's get to it. Okay, I like to use the word betrayal instead of the word bullying, and I tell you why. It gives kids this just open slather to use whatever language they want to use. Bullying has such a connotation to it. I feel like it just boxes kids into almost legal language, and they know policy and procedure at school and what's going to happen next. But its betrayal indicates that trust has been broken, that there's a fundamental part of emotional safety that's been broken, and that they've been violated in some way, and they get to choose the experience. So that's what I like to use. I want parents to understand that their state of mind when they're recalling what has happened might be quite scattered. Because what's happening is they're re-experiencing something that's been traumatic. And oftentimes parents are like, tell me exactly what's happened in the order. And parents want to ask a lot of questions. But I want parents to really realize that their kid's brain is shifting into like survival mode, and it's reliving a necessary process, but it's really painful for kids, and it can be troubling to relive those details. So lots of pauses are okay. Lots of, we've got this together. Lots of things, you're doing really great at explaining this. I've got time. You want to tell your kid that you are not panicked and that they have told the right person. And if it takes 2 or 3 conversations, that's okay. And if you walk away, parents, feeling that didn't quite make sense, or I don't have all the details I need, it's okay. You've had 30 seconds to get some information. They've probably lived with this for weeks, maybe even months. So there's a difference in the process time. They've processed this for longer than you have. You're going to feel shocked and you want like it all now. But they need time to unravel. All right. The third thing I want to say is this. You keep saying, I believe you, I'm here for you. I believe you, I'm here for you, because that's going to help the process. And you keep saying to this, it's okay for you to say to them, I'm finding this actually really hurtful, the thought that someone would hurt you. But I want you to know that I've got me and I've got you. And it's okay. Now, one mum said to me this, Jodi, listen to this story. She said, I can't bear the thought of what's happened to my son. Michelle, is it okay that I speak to someone else? I don't want to betray his trust. Oh, I know. And I said, okay, I want you to do this. He's 14. His ego is real shattered right now, and he's really sensitive. Before you tell anybody, I want you to go to him and I want you to say this. I want you to say, your mama needs someone to talk to right now, because I want to show up the best way I can from you. But I want your permission, and I want you to approve of who I'm going to talk to. The person I want to talk to is grandma. And these are going to be the rules: that she doesn't talk to anybody else, and that she doesn't talk to you about it unless you want to approach her and talk to you. And I want to know that you approve of my choice in person, and that you approve of the conditions that I'm speaking to her under.
Oh, wow.
And the
That's powerful.
I thought so, because it protects his trust.
Yes.
Safety, chemistry, and effort, Jodi. That's what we're modeling to our kids.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Michelle. So thank you. Your wisdom around this is just so deep and wide and practical. And my next question is, okay, how do we help our kids to put a stop to it? Can we help our kids to put a stop to the bullying? Do we, and when do we intervene?
Okay, let safe people hold heavy things.
Yeah.
I repeat it constantly to kids in this situation.
I love
Let
that.
safe people hold heavy things. Remembering that when kids are being bullied, the power has been completely taken out of their hands. So I say to them, I don't want to make you feel any more powerless. I want to do this with you. And I will only step over your judgment if I feel like you are completely unsafe. I want to do this with you. I want to make choices with you. because I want to protect your sense of power right now. My job is to make you feel more powerful, not less powerful. The truth is, though, is that when there's an imbalance of power, nobody, not the most skilled person in the world, is going to get on top of this without adults and peer support to rebalance that sense of power. So
and what, sorry, just for those of you who, Michelle is just kind of like tilting her arm up and down, and it's really just such a good way of kind of like reinforcing this point that the power imbalance, if your elbow's high and your hand's low, then, to sort of level it out a bit like a seesaw, you're saying that you can't rebalance that power. There's nothing we can say or teach our child to be able to do this on their own. They need the peer help and they need the adult help to be able to rebalance
comebacks are not going to do it, people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the things I say is when they go into school, one of the practical things we can do is they need to be able to identify the safe, trusted adult in every room. That's one way to tilt it back. Right?
Yes.
And there's all sorts of little micro things we can use to start tilting this power back, but you have to do it in partnership with them. Otherwise, you've got Buckley's of it working.
Yeah.
And partnership with the school. The tricky thing with the school is sometimes you need to go in and the first thing you need to say is, I need to know who is going to be told about this conversation and what is going to happen next before we start communicating. Because your number one thing is to protect your child. And sometimes school can do some things that can backfire on your kid.
Yeah. Okay. The boundaries and even the scripts, everything that you've put around this, I feel as though, this is not something that I'm facing as a challenge as a parent, but for any parent facing this challenge, as a little recap, let me know if there's anything really important that I've overlooked. That the rebalancing of the power requires help for the young person who is on the receiving end of this bullying, and we've just talked about that, and that is through peers and adult support. That as a parent, your trust and your ability to help empower them again is really important. You're working together. If you need support for yourself, talk to your child about who you might talk to and what you might say, and kind of set that up. And you can go back and rewind the podcast to listen to more details around that. But also the quick comebacks alone, there's nothing that we can, no amount of, telling, quick witty comebacks are going to, equip the child who is on the receiving end of this to be able to overcome it. But it's about supporting them, re-empowering them, and working together and maintaining their trust throughout the whole experience.
And phones are another thing that is going to come into play. You have to choose exposure and what you choose to do with that exposure and how you handle that. Sometimes collecting data on that phone's really important. So closing down accounts is not the smartest thing to do. And Jodi, like one-liners are really important for our kids to keep them moving through a situation without escalating things. And kids do need language, but I feel like that comes more into play once the power is a little bit more in their favor. And if we go straight in with those one-liners, it often doesn't come out as authentic for kids because they actually don't have the confidence. They've been so squashed. And I'm talking about real, genuine bullying here, not like a meanness. Meanness is where, conflict has been wrapped in drama and meanness, it's a little bit out of control. But real bullying is when, they have got that real imbalance there.
Yes. And that is something that I've never thought about before. I mean, it's obvious, but I've never thought about it, that the power balance has to shift. It's not just about what you say and how you react when the bullying is occurring. What is a definition of bullying? Because sometimes kids will say, I'm being bullied. And even just like silliness, like, oh, you're bullying me, just as a silly kind of throwaway line. Yeah. What is the definition of bullying, just so we're clear?
And there's legal implications for this. So definitions actually really matter. But it's one-sided. So I always say to kids, when you're getting a stone thrown at you, be very careful whether you want to throw it back. Some really interesting research from the E-Safety Commissioner just highlighted that the same amount of kids who said that they were being bullied online had actually engaged in the same behavior in the last 12 months. So isn't that interesting? So just a point, okay? So it has to be one-sided. It has to be deliberate and intentionally meant to cause harm. And the definition of harm goes beyond physical harm, emotional, sexual. It goes beyond that. It has to happen more than once. And that harm often recruits the support of other people to magnify that imbalance of power as well. And it has to be consistent. So technically, bullying is just not a one-off experience, although let's not get caught up in definitions in that sense. I've seen horrible things happen in one-off situations.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. I did want to ask you about neurodivergent children, children who, because we talked about before, I just sort of mentioned just the complexity of relationships and the cues, the social cues and the nonverbals and and for parents of children who are neurodiverse, it can be a bit trickier sometimes. In my experience, and this is not research, this is just in terms of the people that I know who have children who are neurodivergent, who have struggled with friendships, and it's been really tough. Have you got some wisdom that you can share with parents, please?
I have loved working with neurodivergent kids in my career in this area, and it's simply because of this. Because social skills are teachable, if you can tap into what they really want. And the last chapter is the principle of growth. Yes. So we want them to be able to tap into what they actually really want. And it can sometimes be, I want someone to sit with. I want to invite to a party. I want to know how to go up to a stranger and have a conversation. And when they have the motivation for it and it's going to do good in the world, they want to connect with people. It's going to do good in the world. They've got all the bones there to actually learn those skills. Now, when we're talking about, neurodiversity, there's such a broad, a broad range of families I'm talking to here. But I want to say something helpful, even though this might not land for every family, okay?
Yes.
And my helpful thing is this, is start small, start in low pressure environments, and that often is not school. And a lot of the answers to our kids' challenges actually don't start by working them out in the playground. They start by what we practice in our homes.
Right.
Including teaching our kids to say no, Jodi. I'll give you a really practical example. When my kids are pestering me over something they want, I have turned around to them oftentimes and I say, you know what, that's the third time you've asked me to buy you that. Now, if your friends at school are pestering you about something and they ask you 3 times and you've already said no, I'm going to tell you exactly what to say back to them by saying this to you now. It's time to move on. And then you walk away, right?
Yes.
So you're using the same skills in your home, right?
Yes.
And you get them to practice in the home what you want them to outwork in the playground.
Yes.
It has to start in low pressure environments. And it is harder for our kids with neurodiversity to read the room. And you're picking that up in family environments and then you're teaching them in the low stake areas. And it is skill gaps. And we have to be honest about that. We need more visuals. We need more tools. And this book, I think, has it. It has those visual tools.
Oh, it is. Honestly, thank you. Look, writing a book, it is an enormous undertaking. It's hard to actually describe just how much work, heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, maybe not blood.
Yeah, blood. Yeah, blood. Yeah. I'll claim it.
But it's thank you for doing the work for families, and just your heart for families and your expertise just shines through. And I would love for you to please let all of our listeners know and our viewers on YouTube. It's so lovely to be on YouTube and for you to be able to see me interacting with my guests. So could you just let everybody know, please, where they can connect with you and your work and where they can find your wonderful new book, Friendship Smart, so they can dive into everything that we've spoken about today and so much more.
Well, my website is michellemitchell.org, and people can find me on social at michellemitchell.author. And Friendship Smart is everywhere where you buy books. So you can find it everywhere, including Audible. And I read every one of those words myself, Jodi.
Well done. Oh, well done. Oh, Michelle, honestly, thank you so, so much. I'm really grateful on behalf of all of the parents that you've been able to support with this conversation. A huge thank you. And thank you for being a guest. And yeah, thank you for all the beautiful things that you said about the podcast and my work too. It really means a lot. So super grateful for you.
My pleasure. It is mutual. Thanks, Jodi.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on, well, hello, anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.